How's everyone doing? This is Matt Abrams with Medical Device Matt. Really excited to talk today about the interview process. I have a lot of people reaching out to me who want to get into medical device, and I think that's awesome. And now these people are getting interviews. And I think it's good to set your expectations and understand what the interview process is to set yourself up for success. So today I'm going to break down the pretty normal standard interview process at the big strategic medical device companies. We'll talk a little bit about each phase and what you can do to prepare, but really I want to spend time today talking about the process so you have a better understanding and you can manage your expectations. In the future we could dive into tips and tricks from building your resume, working with the HR recruiter, the hiring manager, but today let's talk about the process. So first, it starts with your story and your experience. You have a strong why and you want to be in medical device. You find a role and you apply. You find those roles on the internal sites, be it Medtronic, Boston Scientific, and if the role's not there, I always suggest set an alert for that role so when it does become posted, so you can quickly apply. And my recommendation is to network with the teams you want to be a part of, because a lot of times the current workers know what the future entails. They know someone might be leaving, taking a promotion. Sometimes they don't know, but sometimes they can have an idea that the territory is growing so much that they're going to have to add a headcount. And by having the network, you get informed early and you put yourself in a better spot. And before you apply, I've talked many times about networking on LinkedIn to get a referral. Everyone's happy to provide their email and a referral code, and that helps your resume get flagged so that when you are being reviewed by HR, you can get the next interview. So your resume is solid. I always recommend a cover letter, pre-networking. A role pops up in your desired city and your desired field, you apply. What happens next? Do they get back to you the next day? No. Few days? Probably not. Sometimes it could take 7 to 14 days for the HR team to review that role and reach out to you. And if you get past the first steps, which is having a great resume with the right skills and competencies that you took from the job posting, and you have the relevant experience to succeed in the upcoming role, HR reaches out to you via phone call or email. And this will be a 15, 30, 60-minute phone call just to get to know you better. And I call it more of a informational interview. Still an interview, you have to be professional. But in this interview, you're going to connect with an HR agent who's managing the job posting, and they want to hear your story. They want to go over your resume and your experience. It's almost like a screening, a gate to get you to the next hiring manager, the next interview, right? They want to verify all the information you put on your resume is true, that it is skills that would do well for the next job, and they want to hear your story and, more importantly, your why and why you would succeed in this role. It's also informational in the sense that you could get a lot of information about the product, the geography you'll be covering, salary expectations, who the hiring manager is. But sometimes a HR agent, they're very good, but they don't know the exact details. And you're going to find out a lot more when you hopefully get to the next interview with the hiring manager. HR will know the salary and the benefits, but sometimes the geographies can be a little bit, they could be changing, right? So it's not the HR agent's fault, but maybe the geographies are changing or they have a general sense, right? So if you pass the screening, you'll be connected to probably the hiring manager who's overseeing the decision making of this role. And this could be a more formal interview, sometimes in person, sometimes it could be another remote phone call or Zoom. But here you're dressing a professional, business professional. Print your resume, print your cover letter, have a few of them in case there's other people on the panel for the interview. You could pass them out, or maybe the manager wants to. This is going to be a more formal interview compared to the HR screening, but in this interview, the hiring manager is going to go over the role in a little bit more details and really suss out if you will be a good fit for the team, the company, and this product, right? So they're going to ask maybe situational questions, dive into your why, try to understand your clinical knowledge, and if, for example, can you convey and speak to physicians well? Can you share details about this niche product and the disease state that it treats? Can you educate referral physicians, nurses? Can you educate your colleagues? Can you speak well, right? And it can be a tough interview, and there's ways to prepare, and that would be other videos to address that. But in general, you sit down with the HR. You now met the hiring manager for a more formal interview. And what happens next is they say, we'll get back to you. Before the close, you got to make sure you ask for the next interview, right? Hiring manager, really appreciate your time. I hope I can get to the next interview. What does it look like? What do I need to do? At the conclusion of that interview, you won't really have an answer of what's next, but they might say, in 7 days, a week, 2 weeks, we'll get back to you to see if you're a final candidate. Or they might say, hey, we appreciate your time, but we don't think you're a right fit, which is nice. It's nice to get an answer so you can close that and move on, right? So a couple things. Let's go through the different scenarios. You have an interview. You instantly realize the manager knows that you're not going to be a candidate. Probably the next day, the HR agent will send you an email thanking you for the time and consideration, but you're not moving forward to the next round. Sometimes that could take 3 to 5 days. Sometimes it could be a little longer. If things go well, they probably need about a week before they advance you to the next and usually final interview. Some companies string it out with 8 different interviews, which I don't think is fair to the candidate. So you have a good interview with the hiring manager and you are advanced to the next round. They tell you that, right? We're going to do our final interviews in a week and 2 weeks. And at that point, I would ask, is there anything I can do to prepare for that? Can I meet with your team? It's always good to talk to the current team members to get some insider detail, right? Ask how they were successful. Ask how they, did well in training and did well in the field. And that's going to give you information. And also you learn perhaps what the hiring manager is looking for, the characteristics that she is after, right, in her teammates. So during that interim period before the final interview, congratulations. A lot of people have been weeded out from the initial application to the HR interview to the first round. So you might be a handful of applicants left and you need to seize this role, and you can. You absolutely can. So you talk to the team members and you prepare for your final round. Like I said, this process can be lengthy. It's probably a 2 to 4 week process, and a lot of times employers or the HR agents aren't the most communicative, and don't take it to heart. But in general, if people aren't responding, such as reps and clinicals, it could be a bad indicator. HR agents and hiring managers aren't the best at communication, so if they're not responding outside the first or second email, that's pretty much normal. And your HR agent will be your contact for scheduling, or an assistant will be helping you schedule your interview and the slots and the location. But during the prep for the final interview, make sure you have your suit or business professional outfit ready. Again, resumes printed, a pen, and that you know where the location of your final interview is, that you've talked to the team, and you go to the final interview and you perform well. As I mentioned, a lot of times they bring a panel, so it could be the hiring manager, seasoned, experienced sales rep on the team, the area director, and they'll have a consensus decision making. And it's exciting, it's nervous, but you prepare for this, so do well. And usually within a couple of days they have their final candidate, and they'll talk to that final candidate to see if they'll accept the terms of the offer. And sometimes if they don't, it'll go to the second candidate. But usually within a week, if you are going to be offered a role. And that usually comes from the hiring manager letting you know, and then the HR agent would be the one that drafts and formalizes the contract agreement for you to sign. Obviously that's negotiable, and we could do another video on negotiating that, but this was about the process of your first application through the hiring and interview process to the end. And the big thing, when I remember my experience or talk to other people, is that it's a lengthy process. These giant companies move slow. They say a job's opening next month, but it takes a couple months for it to finally open. They move slowly through the interview process, and every company does it a little bit different. But in general, kind of this 4th stage that I talked about, the initial application online through the internal website. I always recommend the internal website instead of third-party sites. Your initial screening, informational call to the HR agent to get information about the role, to suss you out. Your first interview with, probably the determining person in your candidacy, the hiring manager, district manager, and then your final interview, which could be a panel with the hiring manager. That's the general process. Sometimes there's a couple more interviews, or they might bring in senior HR leaders, but in general, it's a lengthy process. It's an enjoyable process, and you can do well. And it's nice to understand the process so you could get your expectations set, because if you don't hear back in a couple of days, don't freak out. It's a process. So this is Medical Device Matt talking about the process of interviewing. Really excited to see people break into medical device. I hope this video was helpful for those people trying to understand the interview process. Cheers. Talk soon.